Howdy my totally tubular spooky gamers, and we are back for yet another ranking video. Now today's ranking video is going to be on Telltale's The Walking Dead series. I think it's fair to say that when it comes to The Walking Dead, you probably think of three different things. You probably think of the TV show by AMC that's been going on too long, you probably think of the actual comic books where it started, or you think of the Telltale series. I mean, what do I even need to say about The Walking Dead? It's The Walking Dead. Everybody and their mom knows what it is. It's very popular. It's kind of died out in recent years, I will say, but at one point it was the shit. And one big reason that it was so popular was Telltale's The Walking Dead, released about a decade ago now. Despite The Walking Dead's popularity, the series actually never had a video game until that Telltale series. Now, Telltale had been making games for years at this point. They had made some stellar adventure games a couple years before, but when The Walking Dead came out, something was different. Something was just different with The Walking Dead, and it just blew up. The game would go on to be a massive success, commercially and critically, with gamers and critics just absolutely loving it, myself included. It would go on to be Telltale's biggest series. They actually would make 5 Walking Dead games. In fact, the last season of The Walking Dead would be Telltale's final game. It was their final product, was the last season of The Walking Dead. And I just recently finished it, so I thought, hey, I've played all these games now, why not rank the Telltale Walking Dead games? Let's rank them all. Now, originally I was going to rank all of the Walking Dead games, not just the Telltale ones. However, after looking further into it, I'm just not going to do that. A majority of the other Walking Dead games are mobile titles, which I don't cover. There's the Walking Dead Survival Instincts, which is based off the AMC show. I played this like 10 years ago when it came out. I did not like it. I thought it sucked. There's a VR game that I've heard good things about. And then there's also Overkill's The Walking Dead, which has been shut down and discontinued. If you want to get technical about it, I'd say they're all number 6. All the Telltale games are better than all the games I just mentioned. When it comes to ranking these games, we're going to be basing it mostly off the story and characters and writing. That's the focus of the Telltale games, so that's what we're going to be focusing on mostly for ranking these games. Of course, gameplay comes into it a little bit and also glitches and bugs, but it is mostly the story, characters, writing. With it being such a character-driven, story-focused series, I'm going to try to have as minimal spoilers here as possible. I'm going to keep things pretty vague on purpose. And as always, let me know what your favorite game is or how your ranking would look. Just comment something and like, share, sub, all that great stuff. So let's get started. What do I think is the weakest of these 5 games? I think the weakest is the spin-off in the series, which is The Walking Dead Michonne. Now, this has nothing to do with Clementine or any of the other Telltale characters. This is just purely about Michonne and relates back to the TV show / comic. It takes place in a gap where Michonne kind of takes a break from the series and disappears for a little bit, and I guess this explains what she was doing and who she was with. Frankly, if I could describe this game in one word, it would be pointless. It just seems really pointless that this came out. It has nothing to do with the other Walking Dead games. I don't really understand what they were going for here. The game is only 3 episodes long and is under 4 hours in length. And you already know how it's going to play out and end. Of course, it's going to end with Michonne leaving whoever she's with in this game to go back to Rick and his group, which is what happens in the show and the comics, making this feel, again, pointless in the grand scheme of things. Michonne is the only interesting character in the entire game, and of course she would be the only interesting character. It's about her. Her backstory with her children and the trauma she faces by leaving them, it was actually really well developed in such a short amount of time, and I actually thought it was really interesting. It was actually good. It's just it comes at a sacrifice. Everyone else is boring as dirt. Nobody's interesting. Nobody's really likable. Everyone's just kind of there. There's not enough time to get attached to these characters or for them to develop, and then because the game is so short, your choices mean basically nothing. I mean, you could argue a lot of the time your choices don't mean much in Telltale games, but like they really mean like nothing in this game. The game's not bad. I would say it's a very average game, but it really just makes me wonder, why is it here? Like, what purpose does this serve? I'm not sure, but it's easily the weakest of all their games, and it's really not even worth playing, especially when compared to the other games on this list. Our next game is The Walking Dead Season 3, A New Frontier. Now, like Michonne, I thought this was a pretty average, maybe a little above average game at best that was ultimately very pointless as well. The game actually does not star Clementine as the main character. She shows up here a bit, but she's definitely not the main character. The main character is Javier, who is a brand new protagonist to the series, and he was alright. He actually has a pretty good backstory and has a lot of family drama that's been going on, and it really rears its ugly head in this apocalypse. I thought Javier trying to save his dysfunctional family or just try to even keep them together and safe was actually pretty good. I thought it was decent enough. It was different from the other Walking Dead games. It certainly felt different. Despite that, I would say that the characters in this game are definitely bottom tier when it comes to Walking Dead games outside of Javier, Clementine, and Jesus. All the other characters in this game really just lack a very good personality, lack motivation in some aspects, and they're just really not all that likable. I mean, even Clementine's not all that likable. She's very different in this game from the other 3 games for basically no reason, and they explain what happens to a character from Season 2, and it's a really shitty explanation. I mean, Clementine was fine enough in this game, but this is the worst incarnation of her, easy. Some of the characters try to come off as flawed or maybe misunderstood, but it honestly just led me to not liking them at all. Like, they were so flawed that I was just like, no, you suck and I don't really care what happens to you. And that happens to one of the main kids in the game, and that's not good. That's definitely not what they were going for, but that's what I felt. I noticed that out of all the games in the series, this was definitely the buggiest with the most glitches and most clipping issues, and when it came to choices you made in the game, this felt pretty pointless. Like, some of them do actually have a real impact, but a majority of them just don't. It also doesn't really feel like there's a central antagonist throughout the game, which is just never a good feeling, and I thought the ending was crazy abrupt. Like, it comes kinda out of nowhere, especially compared to the other games. And the last thing to mention is this game felt incredibly pointless because after this game, outside of one sentence in Season 4, this game means nothing. None of the choices, none of the characters, Clementine never mentions them again. And that's all I gotta say, it's a pretty average game overall. The next game is The Walking Dead Season 2. Now, I remember when this game came out, I was super hype, I was super excited, I played every episode as each one came out, and I think it was actually pretty alright to good. It certainly didn't blow me away like the next 2 games did, but I still quite enjoyed my time with it and thought it was a pretty good game and it told a good story. It takes place after Season 1 and stars Clementine this time. It's about her growing up a little bit more and still dealing with all these shitty adults. See, she's not really a kid, especially after Season 1, however, she's not really an adult either. She still is a bit dependent on the adults, and it's about having to deal with all their bullshit. I really liked Clementine's growth in this game. I thought it was probably the best aspect of the story is how much she grows as a character, especially by the end of it. And I think overall it tells a good story and it very much set up the rest of the series. However, I think the game still is just alright because a lot of these characters really aren't all that memorable, and I think this game retreads a little too much of Season 1. I feel like a couple of these characters are just caricatures of characters from Season 1 that died. Like, they just retread the same ground and have almost the exact same themes and just general personalities to the point that it's just forgettable. It's almost like a been there done that kind of situation, and I feel like the story is kind of a retread of Season 1. Like, it follows a lot of the same beats and everything. Something that was pretty different from the first game was the way the antagonist was approached. It is pretty different from the first game. However, I wouldn't say the antagonist of Season 2 is very memorable or all that good. In fact, I didn't actually remember his name until I looked it up. But hey, it's pretty clear who is the antagonist in this game. This game also has this stitching scene where Clementine has to stitch herself up, and it's a quick time event, so you have to watch the whole thing, and I hated this. Hated it. It was so cringe-inducing. I felt super uncomfortable looking at it. Like, I really genuinely hated this. I was like, this is fucking shit. This sucks. If their goal was to make me cringe and hate this, good job, you did it. I hated it. Despite all that, Season 2 does have some good characters. It has some of the strongest characters in the series, actually. It's just a shame there are so many weak ones, and I thought that the game actually did tell a pretty good plot, despite it feeling like a bit of a retread in a few aspects. And the choices actually really do matter in this game. Not only is it cool that some of your choices mattered in Season 1, but then a majority of them actually do mean even something in Season 2. It does lead to characters' death or survival. I would still say Season 2 is a pretty good game. It didn't wow me like the last game, but if you enjoyed Season 1, I think you'll enjoy Season 2. For my second favorite game, I have The Walking Dead: The Final Season, which was Telltale's final game and the last game in this series. This was actually a really hard decision, and I think that this game is way better than anyone gave it credit for, and I think that it has not only one of the strongest stories in the series, but it has some of the best characters in the entire franchise. The bond that Clementine and AJ have is just fantastic. I loved it, and seeing everything come full circle with Clementine, it was so good. The writing and just general dialogue in this game is superb. I really enjoyed it. I'll just say for the plot, it's about her protecting AJ and doing whatever needs to be done, and I thought it was great. I thought all the characters were great. I would argue that there's almost not a bad character in the game. And it's certainly a quality versus quantity when it comes to the characters, and some of these characters are, again, just some of the strongest characters in the entire franchise, and it's really astounding that they came this late. There are some really good arcs here, there's some surprising twists, and somehow it really added something new to the table for Walking Dead, and that's pretty impressive 5 games in. I will say though, the game is only 4 episodes long. Yeah, each episode is a little longer than the usual Walking Dead episode, but it feels like there should have been more here, and it probably has to do with Telltale's closure midway through the game. Additionally, some of the gameplay is different from the other games. Like, most of the game is over-the-shoulder, third-person, like what you would expect from a big-budget Sony game, and I thought that this was a welcome change. However, it did lead to it being kind of buggy, a lot of areas not loading correctly, and Clementine getting stuck on the environment. There's also like real-time combat that mixes in the QuickTime events with some real-time elements, and I thought this was just very clunky. It wasn't really all that well implemented, and it was fine enough, but I just wasn't really a fan of it and don't really care too much for it. But other than that, I thought this game was actually really excellent. I would say that this is the most underrated Walking Dead game. This might be Telltale's most underrated game, period. I know a lot of people were just totally done with The Walking Dead by the time this came out, myself included. And it wasn't until recently when I played this where I was just like, wow, I really missed out on something, and I think a lot of people are missing out on something by not playing this, because I thought it was really good. So even if you're sick of The Walking Dead or zombie media in general, I think this game will surprise you. I think it'll surprise you, and I think you might actually really like it, how I really enjoyed it also. But it's not number 1. Number 1 has to be Season 1. Season 1 of The Walking Dead is just so superb on so many different levels that there will probably never be an adventure game that is as hype or as praised as much as this game. The game really just got everything right, and Telltale was hitting off on all cylinders. The main character, Lee, he's one of the best main characters of any game. He's superb. His relationship with Clementine and trying to mentor her and get her ready for this horrible world, it's amazing. It's very emotional, it's excellently written, and the way the game progresses is just great. Lee really just is a legendary character in gaming, and the way that this game sets up the other Walking Dead games and how some of your choices matter in this game to go on for the rest of the series, that's really impressive and makes me really it makes me raise an eyebrow. I'm just like, wow, damn, this is really cool. But it wasn't just Lee. All the other characters were pretty fantastic also. Of course, Clementine was a real standout. I mean, she's the second main character. She's just a little girl being introduced to this horrible world that she's unfamiliar with. Like, it's pretty great stuff. Like, it's very emotional. This game is absolutely a tearjerker. It really pulls at the heartstrings. It pulls at every string, because I just felt every emotion while playing this game. There were parts where it was funny, where I was mad, where I was sad, maybe something in between. It's great. The other characters like Kenny, Omid, Krista, Lily, Duck, I could go on and on. Like, a lot of these characters are great, and this was the first time we had seen characters like this in The Walking Dead. See, it feels like some of the characters in the later games were just trying to recreate the magic of the first game. That's just how good some of these characters were, and the plot points and the way the game progresses, it's all just expertly paced, it's really well done, and I enjoyed all of it. And hey, your choices actually do matter for some outcomes and some characters' deaths, or maybe they survive, but it really did actually matter for a lot of these choices. Sure, plenty of them don't mean shit, but some of them actually did. And I know there are plenty of people that'll just go, oh, this is just a movie with QuickTime events like Heavy Rain, and I gotta say, there is more gameplay to this game than some people would give it credit. Sure, it's not a lot and it's less than the normal adventure game, but there is some here. There's even the DLC for this game that I also enjoyed. It wasn't amazing or as good as the main game, but it was a nice little bonus. But I mean, you already knew that Season 1 was going to be the best game. It's the best Walking Dead game, it's one of the best Telltale games, if not the best Telltale game, and it's arguably the best adventure game ever made. I mean, it's just how it is. And if anyone thought otherwise, I'd be like, huh, well, what do you think is the best then? Which is why I'm asking you people in the comments what you people think is the best adventure game. And I'd be shocked if this game wasn't one of your top adventure games. Either way, that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Have a spooky night indeed. Stay away from them zombies. I recommend buying The Walking Dead Complete Definitive Edition or whatever they're calling it on PS4 and Xbox One. Comes with all 5 games I've talked about here. Anyway, have a good one. See ya.